Okay, so not the best. Most people consider this a bad movie, but by the title of the video, you can see clearly we don't. We'll address some of the flaws and talk about what we did enjoy, and hopefully, if you hated this movie, you might consider giving it another chance. If you already love this movie, why not let us know your favorite moments down below? Now, let's swing right into this with spoilers and all.
I'm gonna kill the light. Everyone in the city is gonna know how it feels to live in my world.
Some people say this movie was overstuffed, and they aren't completely wrong, but I personally feel it worked. Now, if it was to be fixed, I'd say make the movie longer. Add the deleted scenes and the extras the director wanted to have, like the rumored scene where Peter snaps and kills Goblin, or even the addition of Mary Jane would have been great. Also, just the scene with Peter and his father would have been a fantastic attention grabber. I'm not even going to mention the extra stuff for Harry and Electro that was also cut. I will also admit that I'm probably in the minority here because I have absolutely no problems with movies being over 3 hours or more. There were also complaints about the villains, and I'll admit Electro could have been better, but he wasn't awful. Work a corporate job just for a little, and you'd feel like him. Be socially awkward on top of it, and boom, you're basically him. People complained about his writing, but I think it's more so how it is in here. If this dialogue was in the Raimi trilogy, it wouldn't even have seemed out of place, since each one had cheesy writing in it. But since these two movies went more darker and grounded, it did throw some people off. But Ash and I both didn't mind at all. In some ways, the cheesiness was also needed. Just think of the very serious things that happen in this movie. You take all those cheesy comic-like moments out, and then this film itself would just be depressing. A lot of similar things were said about Rhino as well. The biggest issue for him was actually the advertising. It seemed like he would be in there a lot and had a little bit more of a Luke Skywalker moment in The Force Awakens. When we watched these movies again for these videos, Ash said she hadn't watched any of the Amazing Spider-Man films since they came out and remembered almost nothing. So when she rewatched this, she actually had no issue with Rhino. Actually, her biggest complaint with him was that we didn't get to see more of him in future movies along with Andrews. I had almost no problem with Harry. Only thing that I would have preferred would probably be a small mention of him in the first one. Maybe in Uncle Ben's voicemail where he's talking about unresolved issues, he could have mentioned his only friend moving away. Other than that, I liked watching him spiral. It was mentioned he has the same disease as his father, but more severe, so it makes sense for how fast he snaps. He's really what Peter could have been when you think about it. There's so many similarities between Norman and Richard, but how they handled their kids was drastically different. Harry's childhood was stolen, while Richard did what he could to let Peter have his.
How could you possibly understand that your childhood had to be sacrificed for something greater?
We're gonna spend every day from now on looking over our shoulders, never feeling safe. We can't do that to him.
There are moments between him and Peter that can be awkward, and that's what makes their relationship great. Trying to reconnect with a friend after years can be super awkward, especially when you don't have a whole lot of friends like Peter. Harry is honestly probably the craziest villain he's fought so far. He's fighting to kill Spidey as well as Gwen, so I guess he was partially successful. Now, instead of just talking about what-if scenarios, let's actually talk about what is here and what makes this film one we love.
Officer! Am I talking louder than I usually talk right now?
Yes.
This film has a lot that is overlooked, the main thing being the special effects and the directing. The camera shots are flawless. Like, look at this perfect Spidey intro. Even if you hate this film, there's so many undeniably great moments, and this is one of them. Whether it's the perfect moment for slow-mo or just having little Easter eggs. I personally wasn't a fan of Electro being blue, but I also didn't hate it. At the end, or even the fight in Times Square, it was so cool to see special effects be better than even some movies released today. The music in this movie is also just phenomenal, but that's not surprising considering it's from Hans Zimmer, so enough said, the man's a legend. I already talked about the three villains, but I wanted to mention the fourth one real quickly, and that's time. From the beginning of the film, we see Peter is constantly running late, even almost missing his own graduation. He's also trying to get back time or information about his parents. Not to mention Peter correcting his lack of time spent with Harry, and then the time left with him being alive and healthy. By the end of the film, he is literally fighting time as he does everything he can to keep the clock tower and Goblin from hurting Gwen. And in the end, he was just a little too late. I also think the relationship between Peter and Gwen is almost always overlooked. Their connection felt natural and adorable. It was great to see the struggle of them wanting to be with each other, but also to keep Gwen safe. Everyone talks about her death, but no one talks about the lead up to it through both films. If she would have just died, it wouldn't have mattered. Our emotion would have been more so based on how Peter reacted. But because they did such a great job with having us feel and care about them, we feel the loss and hurt alongside Peter and break even more so when he starts breaking. He hurts so much to the point of walking away from the Spidey suit for nearly 6 months. The emotional side of this film is overlooked very often. People make fun of Gwen's body hitting the ground, but don't make fun of others like Ancient One. And I think that's mostly because people don't want to remember the moment that happens afterward.
Stay with me, stay with me. Stay with me, stay with me. You stay with me.
I also almost never hear anyone talk about the moments between Peter and Aunt May, but we'll talk about both these moments later in the next section.
As far as I'm concerned, you're my boy, and I won't hurt you.
This film carries on our character arcs by building upon the previous movie and continues to have effects. We see how much of an impact Richard, Kurt, and even Norman have despite having a small amount of screen time. We see the glowing letter of recommendation is actually taking Gwen far from Peter. Kurt, trying to turn the city into lizards, made Oscorp look bad, so they destroyed all the previous projects using creatures, which could have saved Harry. Projects that Norman, Richard, and Kurt all worked on together. We also have the major impact of Captain Stacy from the last film. He literally haunts Peter, and we see it affecting Peter in numerous ways. This film did great with showing Peter's PTSD inside of his head, not just a possible concept.
You don't give people hope. You take it away.
No, Harry.
I'm gonna take away yours.
No, run! Harry!
We get even more of Peter's parents, and even see their supposed death. I love how they talk about missing and almost regret leaving Peter, but Richard knows he has responsibility. We even see they're not just all brains with how they fight back against the guy hired to kill them. He holds his own, and his wife does decent before getting shot. In both films, the little bit we get of them, we see how much he lived by the saying, with great power comes great responsibility. We also learn the secret of Peter's power is his DNA. He took the slander so he could keep Peter safe. It's great to see Peter and Spidey clashing so much here. They're the same, yet drastically different. Peter's still struggling being selfish, while Spidey is struggling being too selfless. Peter loves his aunt and uncle, but there are still moments where he seems almost ungrateful because he wishes his parents were there instead, like when he graduates.
I wish your uncle could have been here.
Me too. And my folks.
Yeah.
He's still trying to fill that void, but we also see it with Gwen and how possessive he is of her. He wants her to stay instead of going away to college, while his Spidey side wants the relationship over because of the promise he made to her father. Spidey is also just taking over more and more, causing him to be late for so much. He doesn't just stick to taking on big criminals, he even helps smaller people. Literally. He helps a child getting bullied and even walks him home. It's incredibly nice, but it's taking away from his own life that he still wants. He just needs to find the time to balance everything. The fight in Times Square was mind-blowing. Everything flowed perfectly. The action, the slow-mo, the camera shots, and of course the music. Spidey's trying to talk Electro down, and when he has to fight, he does literally everything he can to save everyone. Even when he loses one of his web shooters, he uses the other one perfectly. Every fight scene with Electro was a blast, and the colors they used were amazing. The end fight with him was just as good. Electro is inexperienced, so he's just destroying things and teasing him, while Spidey is using the destruction to his advantage as well as his brain. The moment between Peter and May is one of my favorite moments. May cares so much, and we see how tired she is of Peter obsessing over his parents when she was the one who was there. She's dealing with just life. Life without Ben, life with Peter growing up, life with Peter still wanting his parents. She continues to keep going, even though she doesn't really know what or how to do so, much like raising Peter.
And you're dreaming about your perfect father who was never here. No. No, I won't tell you. You're my boy. As far as I'm concerned, you're my boy. And I won't hurt you.
Of course, when talking about moments that make this movie, we have to talk about Gwen dying. From the second he jumps up for her, the intensity does not go away. And when it does, you feel like Peter. Lost. The fight is probably the craziest of the film. We see Spidey fight with speed and aggression while also trying his best to keep Gwen safe. I thought about Green Goblin at this moment and how he was right.
The one thing they love more than a hero is to see a hero fail.
One of the reasons I love this movie, and it's one of my favorite Spider-Man movies, is because despite his best efforts, Spidey failed to save one of the things he cared about most. We love Peter for his relatability and his flaws, and the fact that it doesn't stop with Peter but also moves over to Spidey as well is just phenomenal. The whole final section is Peter just trying to keep Gwen out of it, but
nobody makes my decisions for me, all right? Nobody. This is my choice.
Peter already blamed himself for her father's death. Now losing her, we see how all the loss he's seen takes a toll. It's understandable that he gives up being Spider-Man for a bit after her passing. Look at this film as well as the last one. In both instances, he wouldn't have won if Gwen wasn't around. He relied on her in every way possible. So with her gone, who helps? Who guides him? Thankfully, we still have May. I love that she is still dealing and trying to cope with losing Ben, and her doing so, she tries to help Peter.
You throwing his stuff away?
I couldn't do that. It's part of me. I'm gonna take one last look. And I'm gonna put it where it belongs.
How does he cope with Gwen? Thankfully, he does it better than the last film. But he does grow in a similar way. Last film, we had Uncle Ben's message. This one, we have Gwen's speech, and it's just as good. She talks about hope and how necessary it is. Hope, what Peter felt Spider-Man stood for. When he lost his love, he lost his hope and his belief in it. Now, without Spider-Man, the city is losing hope. But we see the impact he had when the kid he saved earlier is willing to try and stop Rhino. Sometimes, you just need your significant other to give you a kick in the ass to do the right thing. While there are some things off about this film, there's a lot here to like. The biggest issue is that Andrew didn't get to keep going and finish his story. With how much his character has been through, you can see an older version of him being a great mentor, a lot like the Peter in the Spider-Verse movie. I want to know, did you hate this movie at the beginning, or did you always love it like I did? Are you as disappointed as we are that Andrew never got his continuation? What's your favorite moment in the two films? Let's talk everything Amazing Spider-Man down below. Now, until next time, stay nerdy and keep binging.
It's easy to feel hopeful on a beautiful day like today. But there will be dark days ahead of us too. There will be days where you feel all alone. And that's when hope is needed most. No matter how buried it gets, or how lost you feel, you must promise me that you will hold on to hope. Keep it alive. We have to be greater than what we suffer. My wish for you is to become hope. People need that. And even if we fail, what better way is there to live? As we look around here today, at all of the people who helped make us who we are, I know it feels like we're saying goodbye, but we will carry a piece of each other into everything that we do next, to remind us of who we are and of who we're meant to be. I've had a great 4 years with you. I'll miss you all very much.